In 1958, the leader of China, Mao Zedong, had a big idea, something revolutionary that would change China for the better. He wanted to make China rich and make it powerful very quickly. A world quickly formed surpassed Britain in 15 years. Zedong wanted to do this through industrialization. He called this idea the Great Leap Forward. It happened between 1958 and 1962 during the Cold War, a time when many countries, including China, the United States, and the Soviet Union, were fighting to be the strongest. China wanted to catch up fast. Mao and his team believed the people could do anything if they were together, but things didn't go the way they hoped.
Tired of the old radio? So many companies are producing dingy radios that don't last, are low quality, and overall with their standing as an everyday use item, are just so inconvenient for the everyday person. Look no further, because Aldo's radios have come up with a sleek, beautiful model that fits into every household. The tuning knobs are beautiful wooden plates that complement the bass perfectly well. The bass comes in various colors: white, beige, and multiple shades of blue, grey, and green. And for the women, of course, who love and live for vibrancy, shades of bright colors to add a pop to your kitchen or your living room. The sounds are crisper than so many of the models that have that awful static sound in the background, and we've reduced that sound to nearly nothing. The best part is, these radios are built durably, and they're meant to last for a good couple of years, which is so important as an everyday item, especially around the rowdy young'uns. So go to your local radio shop and pick up one of Aldo's new F3 model radios, which will definitely be worth your while. Before the Great Leap, China was a poor country with most people being farmers. China was also recovering from years of war. First came World War II, and then a brutal civil war between the communists, led by Mao, and the nationalists, led by Chiang Kai-shek. After winning the Civil War in 1949, Mao and the Communist Party took over. They promised a better life for the poor. They took land from landlords and gave it to peasants. They also pushed for equality between men and women. Many people believed in Mao. He seemed like a hero who would fight for the poor. But his ideas were based on a system where the government controlled everything, and everyone was supposed to work together for the common good. In a perfect world, perhaps this would have been the ideal way to live. However, humans are far from perfect. Those in power will always have some people who exploit and abuse their capabilities for their own gain. Mao and many others were inspired by a man named Karl Marx, a German thinker who lived in the 1800s. Many of the prominent figureheads were inspired by the ideology of Marxism. It is the ideology created by Karl Marx. Marxism is a very communal ideology. It analyzes how societal structures of hierarchy had led to many of the world's issues, the most prominent of which is exploitation by the upper class, who owns everything, of the working class. It's an ideology where there is no private property, and a society based on need, not profit. This isn't necessarily bad in small groups, but to sustain large amounts of people, it just doesn't work. He believed that capitalism would one day be replaced by a system where workers controlled everything. This system was called communism, and Mao saw himself carrying out Marx's dream, just in his own way.
1958, Chairman Zedong announced a new plan called the Great Leap Forward. Mao had two main goals: increase food production and make lots of steel. He believed that this would make China strong and modern like the Soviet Union or even the United States. To prove it, he ordered the country to change almost overnight. People were told to stop working on small family farms. They were moved into large communities where everything was shared. Mao also believed it's called mass mobilization, the idea that if millions of people work together, we could achieve anything.
The government created massive communes. These communes consisted of groups of 10,000 to 20,000 people. They all lived and worked together. All forms of private property were banned. People no longer owned their land, tools, or even their animals. Everything was taken from them. Even their homes and meals were shared. Identities were stripped in all but name. Meals were served in giant canteens. Parents worked long hours in fields or factories while children were raised in community nurseries. This was meant to promote equality and teamwork, But in reality, it took away personal freedom. People were separated from their families and lost the motivation to work hard. Some people even began to pretend to work, since the food was guaranteed no matter what. To meet steel targets, Mao ordered people to build backyard furnaces. Every village and town had to produce steel, even if they had no experience. And most lacked the necessary knowledge to even produce steel properly. Everything was hasty. People destroyed their tools, their cooking pots, utensils, and even furniture just to melt it into metal. But most of the steel made this way was useless. It was brittle and weak. The quality of steel produced in this fashion was incredibly low, and a lot of it was just unusable. Meanwhile, farms were left with fewer workers. Crops went unharvested, tools were gone, but local officials, afraid to disappoint Mao, kept saying production was going up.
To protect crops, Mao launched a campaign to kill 4 pests: rats, flies, mosquitoes, and sparrows. People banged pots and threw rocks and destroyed sparrow nests across the country. But the campaign backfired. Sparrows didn't just eat grain, they also ate insects. They might have been a nuisance, but they were necessary. Without sparrows, locusts and other pests increased in numbers. They devoured crops that were already in short supply. Officials feared Mao's anger, partly because his word, as a chairman, was basically the ultimate law. Everybody, all officials at every level, were expected to obey him. There was a movement called the 100 Flowers Campaign. It was created to encourage debates and discussions. However, this was seen as a threat by Zedong. In the anti-racist campaign, he purged people from their political and social lives. Those who were seen as too individualistic, not supportive enough communist ideals were punished and stripped away. People weren't sent to labor camps or imprisoned. They were unfortunately executed, so they lied about how well the farms were going. Some claimed they harvested 2 or 3 times more food than they actually had. Mao believed the numbers. He thought China had more than enough food, so he ordered large amounts to be sold overseas or stored for the military. At first, people had been cooperative, 10 or so families aiding each other, but things had escalated too far now. Villages were left with little or nothing. Peasants starved. It wasn't even worth it in the end. Products were low quality in favor of large amounts of it, but they couldn't even say anything. Speaking up could mean arrest or worse. Between 1959, China faced a massive famine. People starved in the countryside. They ate tree bark, grass, and even mud to survive. The cause isn't just bad weather, it was Mao's policies. Communes failed, fake numbers fooled the government. Food was taken from villages, leaving people with nothing. Between 15 and 45 million people died. It was one of the worst famines in history, and it didn't have to happen. One brave leader, Peng Dehuai, wrote a letter to Mao. He said the Great Leap Forward was failing and people were starving. Mao was furious. He removed Peng from power and called him a traitor. After that, almost no one dared to speak out. The fear of punishment stopped people from telling the truth. And with truth, no one could fix the problems. First, China and the Soviet Union were allies. They shared communist ideas and helped each other. The Soviets gave China help, exports, technology, and money. But after the Great Leap Forward failed, the friendship between them broke. The Soviet Union criticized Mao's plans. Mao called them weak and accused them of betraying communism. This led to a major split called the Sino-Soviet split, and China became isolated from other communist countries. By 1962, the Great Leap Forward was clearly a disaster. Leaders like Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping tried to fix things. They ended the communes and let farmers grow food for themselves again. Food production slowly improved, like a little better, but Mao felt like he was losing power. In 1966, just a few years later, he launched a new movement, the Cultural Revolution, another time in China's history. Some people blame the weather for the famine, but most historians today agree the real cause was government policy and Mao's refusal to listen. Bad ideas, forced labor, fear of speaking out, and fake reports all played a part. This famine wasn't caused by nature, it was caused by people.
Today, the Great Leap Forward is not often talked about in China. It's rarely taught in schools. The government avoids talking about the famine. It's a subject that is often overlooked in favor of our own history. We don't teach it either. In terms of mass death, we often look to the more widely known event of Jewish persecution, the Holocaust. A horrible event, more tragic than most would dare to imagine, though orchestrated by a man who was partly human. But remembering matters. When mistakes are hidden, they can't happen again. And when lives are lost, we owe it to them to tell the truth.